Good afternoon again, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our keynote speaker this afternoon. I am very happy to introduce to you Scott James. Scott James received his MBA here at Notre Dame in 1999, as well as the Snite Leadership Award. He was recently named by Businessweek as one of America's most promising social entrepreneurs. After escaping the ample marketing budgets and cushy benefits packages of high-tech corporations, Scott became enamored with all things open source. He is currently working as the founder and president of Fair Trade Sports, serving as the free marketer for the abolitionist group Not for Sale campaign, and teaching the marketing class at the Sustainable MBA program, Bainbridge Graduate Institute. And yet, he's still fun to talk to at parties. Scott lives on an island near Seattle with his wife, Susan, and their young children, Justice and Mercy. Will you please help me welcome Scott James?
Thank you, Kim. Right now, my classmates from the 1999 cohort are all probably thinking the same thing. They're thinking Scott still doesn't know where to find a necktie. And it's true. It's a good thing I moved to the West Coast. So Kim shared with you my official bio, but that doesn't, one of our writers did that. So that doesn't tell you who I am really. And I think that's important because every speaker has a bias. And if you know that bias, then you can use that as a filter, as a lens for how you receive the information from that speaker. So let me just confess my biases to you up front. I'm a follower of the teachings of Christ. I'm a husband and a father and a brother and a son. I've been called a computer geek with people skills. I've also been called a tree hugger. But, like many of you, I'm also a card-carrying capitalist. Now, in the interest of transparency, I'm going to tell you my express goal today. I don't normally do this, but I don't also normally get to just talk to business folks, especially ones that were all trained in the same school. My goal is to move you to the next stage on this diagram. Everyone in here is sitting at one stage of this diagram as it relates to the theme of asking more of business. Now, there's a catch. The catch is that you can typically only move someone, whenever you talk to them, forward one stage. Now, that includes whether you're talking about a formal presentation or an informal ride in the elevator together. Either way, we have the opportunity to move somebody on this awareness continuum forward one step. So those are my biases. Consider yourself forewarned. Here's our agenda for the next hour. I'm going to share a few thoughts with you for 30 minutes. Then we're going to use the mics here on the stands for a group discussion and question and answer for 30 minutes. Then we'll take a break and we'll join Dean Wu. Not in the courtyard, but I believe somewhere inside, given the rain. Atrium. There we go. So the ancient proverb of "may you live in interesting times" is certainly true for us. A glance at any news source yields multiple macro forces at work in our world today. They're all vying for our attention, both our personal attention and our professional attention. Now, when you combine these forces in a negative way, you have the potential for a complete train wreck. The entrepreneur Paul Hawkins has correctly summarized the possibilities here. He's correctly summarized it with this statement: every living system is in decline. Every living system is in decline. And the department head over in the biology building can show you the research, the peer-reviewed research to back up that statement. Now, in addition to the environment, there's other big issues which are screaming to be addressed. Poverty, peace, and there's other smaller, more mundane issues that tend to get swept under the rug, but they're still important. Paying our workers a fair wage, ensuring a healthy work environment. What I'd like to do today is I'd like to take a subset of these worldwide issues that we're facing today and look at them through the lens of asking more of business. Now, there's many issues. Today we'll just talk about 5 of them. First, climate change. We have some scientists talking about a coming ice age. We have other scientists talking about global warming. Either way, you're looking at significant climate change. Second topic we'll talk about, energy change. You have peak oil scientists talking about the decline of the oil production. And on the other side, you have alternative energy optimists, both telling us their story through media today. I happen to believe both of them. And we'll talk about that. Third, economic change. We've got bright economists debating whether we're facing a recession, a depression, a rebound, hyperinflation, a complete financial meltdown. They're all over the map. Not too many people, though, with a PhD behind their name are saying that everything is going to be just okay. Fourth force that we'll talk about today, societal change. Let's just take the state of California as an example. When I was here, we had so many California students. They called this place UCND as part of the UC system of schools. Just in the state of California, you have both water wars and immigration healthcare issues, both vying for top billing in the media on a weekly basis. Both of these point to significant social change. And fifth, monetary change. For the first time in our lifetimes, we have someone calling for the US dollar to step down. China is calling for the US dollar to step down as the preferred international currency. Climate change, energy change, economic change, societal change, and monetary system change. Massive worldwide global change surrounds us. But this is nothing new. Previous generations have seen similar levels of change happen on their watch. What is new is that this change, these forces are taking place on top of the brilliant but delicate just-in-time system that many of us in this room have built. And that's where we're in danger of a train wreck. Now, some people look at impending change and they freeze. Other people look at impending change and they freak out. Neither response is productive. But some people look at change and they see opportunity. Let's take one of these forces as an example, energy change. You have courageous people like T. Boone Pickens who look and they see energy change and they see an opportunity. Now, in case you've been living in a cave, T. Boone Pickens is the billionaire oil wildcatter. He's now leading our country towards independence from foreign oil via wind, solar, and natural gas, a direction I believe is sorely needed. In fact, he's here on campus on Monday to talk about his plan. I'd encourage you, if you're still on campus, to go. If not, just Google Pickens' plan, and you can read all about it. Now, Pickens reminds me of Gary Jagot. He's the type of person that you spend 3 minutes watching, and you realize you want to work with this person. Like Pickens, Gary is also doing energy. In fact, at home in Seattle, Gary's spending 4 days a week as the chief marketing officer at a new company called Optimum Energy Company. His tagline for the company is very enjoyable. I like it. Do good, do well, and prove it. Now, what his company does is they're striving for transparency to back up the energy savings that they claim in their marketing materials. They install web-based software on a location at a building or a home, and they measure it. It's the fulfillment of the adage, if you want something to improve, measure it. And what Gary is doing is taking the application of ethics and sustainability and fusing it into the core of his business. Both Pickens and Gary Jagot are adept at spotting opportunities that others do not see. A young friend of mine is currently teaching English in China, and I asked her if she would ask her students to prepare a visual, a kanji, for the word opportunity, Jihua. I've totally mispronounced that, and I apologize. But that's what the teenage students told me. And they sent this visual for me to share with you. Now, Dean Wu taught me about opportunities 10 years ago when we graduated. She explained they're the result of the intersection of a problem with a ready state of being. And to be ready, we need to be able to ask more of businesses and ask more of ourselves. Dean Wu is leading our school into interesting times under this banner of Ask More of Business. But what exactly is it that we're asking for more of from business? Well, for the past 100 years, we've been asking for more of business in the areas of profit and efficiency and effectiveness. But given these multiple macro forces at work today and the complete dearth of principled business leadership that we've just seen recently, we need a shift. We need to begin asking more of business in different areas such as transparency and sustainability and ethics. Now, we saw an inkling of this yesterday even, as the executive pay at the bailed out firms was cut by Ken Feinberg. And we saw the president urging the Senate to bring legislation to bear on the issue. Personally, I'm not a big fan of legislation. We'll get into that a little bit later. But it is good to see change happening. Now, both as individuals and as companies, we need to heed the advice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to look beyond our own concerns to those of humanity. And the current crop of business students around the country is doing just that. Take Harvard as an example. Not only is the largest student club at Harvard Business School the Social Enterprise Club, half of the 2009 class just signed what they're calling an underground oath, an unofficial oath, the day before graduation. Let me share with you the three things that this statement that the students signed said. It said that they would promise to act with the utmost of integrity, that they would resist decisions and behavior that advance their own narrow ambitions, and third, that they would work in a way that enhances the value of their enterprises to create for society additional value over the long term. It's not just here at Notre Dame. We're seeing this at B schools all across the country. Even though we come from a wide variety of backgrounds, we were all trained in business here at Notre Dame. Every time we came on campus, we received insights into human and worker dignity, into stewardship, into concern for the poor and the vulnerable segments of society. As Professor Tavis has said, it's the business people who are being called to better the world. And they need moral guideposts. Where are they going to find those guideposts? Right here at Notre Dame. Right here, starting with you and with me. So how do we go about bringing more of Notre Dame to the business community worldwide? Let's look at this in three movements, three acts. The first will be a couple examples from my own attempts to date. The second will be examples from other Notre Dame alumni. The third act will zoom back out, and we'll look at this from a business opportunity standpoint. Opportunities which bring positive solutions to these vexing global issues. The first example from my career is from my buddy Dave Batstone. He's an ethics professor at University of San Francisco. He's also an author. And his last book was called Not for Sale. And it was an expose of the modern-day slave trade. It's a very difficult, the book's only this thick, and it's a very difficult book to get through. He sent me a copy, told me what he was thinking about, and I helped him out a bit with the marketing for the campaign. The most recent program is actually geared towards business. It's called Free to Work. We're asking companies to take a pledge of not using forced labor, to sign a protocol stating as such, and then to be open to third-party outside monitoring. The first brand name that we've got on board is Manpower. Manpower happens to be the world's largest private employment agency. They employ 4 million people a year. Second example is from my company, Fairtrade Sports. It's a Newman's Own S-Style, or it's a Newman's Own Style S Corporation, just a normal for-profit S Corporation that designates all the after-tax profits to children's charities. We turn 3 years old next month. I hope to hit profitability with this crew sometime within the next few quarters. The product line is the world's first eco-certified and fair trade certified line of sports balls for soccer and football and more. They're all under the brand name Respect. as in respect for the hands that made this ball, with which we play and train and compete. The basic idea is that our children should not be playing with sports balls created by someone else's children. Now, Fairtrade Sports is a founding member of a group called B Corporation. That's B as in benefit. My acquaintances, Bart and Christina Houlihan, along with a small group of their friends, all wicked smart East Coast entrepreneurs, have formed B Corporation. They are literally trying to work themselves out of a job. They want the IRS to put B corporations on the same status as C and S corporations. This is a policy-level change. The goal is to encourage business leaders at this high-level policy change to ditch the old rule of just maximizing shareholder wealth for a new rule of maximizing shareholder and social value simultaneously. There are up to 220 companies that are members so far, 50 different industries, and a market value of over $1 billion. I think they're at $1.1 billion. Now, did you catch that phrase, maximizing both shareholder and social value? Does that phrase, social value, strike you as a bit inappropriate to hear in the halls of a business school? Not at Notre Dame, but for many of our colleagues, it does. We're asking them, for the first time perhaps, to make decisions with their whole body, not just their head. You know, 10 years ago, on the first MBA spiritual retreat that we put together, Dean Wu told me that she had made every major decision in her career with her heart, not her head, not just with analytical thinking. Now, keep in mind, this is coming from a person who can not only hold her own in a room full of PhD business professors, but she can actually lead that team of business professors into the 21st century. And those professors have been busy training us. For the second act, let's look at what other Notre Dame alumni are doing. Allow me a few minutes to highlight what some of the folks that Gary Gigot has spurred on through the Gigot Center for Entrepreneurship and through Irish Angels Network. The first is Pablo Nava with PFNC Global Communities. Por fin nuestra casa. At last, a home of our own. They take recycled shipping containers and turn them into affordable housing all along the U.S.-Mexico border. It's a brilliant idea. Second example would be Xavier and the crew at Better World Books. They just launched in 2002, and yet they've already generated millions and millions of dollars for literacy programs. Or take recent graduate Sheila Pawinski's MEDEX cycle, where she rounds up surplus medical supplies and then brings them to disadvantaged countries. Or take my friend Mark Holloway, who graduated the year before I did. He's leading the efforts for Social Venture Partners, SVP, in Portland, Oregon. Rather than practice venture capital, Mark and the other SVP leaders practice venture philanthropy, where they connect business leaders, professional business managers in their town, with the most promising community events and efforts in that town. He brings in professionals that are interested in investing more than just their treasure, more than just their money, but also bringing in their own time and their talent. There's SVP chapters all over the country. Check out the one that's in your city. Now, each of these individuals is asking more of themselves. They're asking more of business. And each of these individuals is demonstrating integrity on a daily basis. Each of these individuals is building an effective organization to reach their goals. And each of these individuals is directly contributing to the greater good. There's many other stories. If you haven't done so already, the new Ask More of Business website at the main business school page, there's a section called Asking More Commentary. And it's full of essays written by our professors. And it's a great way to see a very quick glimpse into the depth behind Notre Dame's commitment here. It shows how our campus is in a unique position to bring solutions to the marketplace to affect this massive positive change. There are very few alumni networks as rabid and solid as ours. A quick example. Look at what my classmate and friend Jim Bolt accomplished. He didn't think enough West Coast companies were coming to campus to recruit. So he took the students to the West Coast. It was a brand new reverse recruitment process, all spurred on by an alum, with no motivation other than a passion for this campus. All done while Jim led a very busy, very successful life. It's this passion that we must tap into and share with the world. Now, as we tap into this passion, where do we direct it? When we think of asking for more sustainability, more transparency, more ethical decision-making, what segments do we look to for this? Well, frankly, you could answer that question with all of them. But for our discussion purposes today, let's consider just 6 topics. These are collectively known as peak everything, and they are very hotly debated right now among scientists and other thinkers around the world. We'll use these 6 areas to look at 6 different types of business opportunities and 6 different types of business thinkings to which we need to shift. The type of business opportunities here range from macro policy level changes to personal lifestyle changes. But one thing that they have in common is a fundamental shift, a positive shift in the way that we make our business decisions and take action. As an example, let's take this first one, water. Now, this is an example of a policy change. Water security is clearly a global issue right now. We failed to conserve our natural resources. Now, North America appears to have plenty of water. It's all bottled up into 2 main places, the Colorado River and Hudson Bay. Some might say that this is a political issue masquerading as a resource issue. But even if we reallocate North American water, the issue does not disappear completely. It might become more manageable. Positive change here could happen via policy. One possible solution is similar to what the B Corporation team is doing. They've effectively created a private solution that they hope one day will become official IRS policy. We could do the same via water with a reallocation plan. Next example. Let's zoom from the macro, the policy level, down to the do-it-yourself level. Let's talk about food, particularly corn, meat, and rice. Now, if you eat out a lot, you're mostly eating reconstituted corn. And it takes a lot to produce all that corn. Now, you can't fault food scientists for wanting to go this direction. Corn has a great ROI. It returns a terrific amount of calories for the dollar investment. But to produce all that corn, we're burning through enormous amounts of fertilizer and fuel. There's a standard joke now that we typically eat a 3,000-mile Caesar salad. The ingredients of that Caesar salad that we have here were trucked in 3,000 miles. Now, this is an opposite example of policy, our first one. In the words of farmer Joel Salatin, somebody who I read quite a bit of, let me just read you this quote. "We ask for too much salvation by legislation. All we need to do is empower individuals with the right philosophy and the right information to opt out en masse." It's a do-it-yourself solution. The lousy economy has produced a resurgence in do-it-yourself victory gardens all across the country. And along with those do-it-yourself gardeners who are growing their own fruits and vegetables in their backyards is a new crop of businesses, products and services that have grown up to support that new do-it-yourself network. Now, these 2 examples, I've been talking a lot about North America. This is not a North America-centric or a U.S.-centric issue. Take rice. The World Bank actually lists 33 countries around the world as being in a state of civil unrest due to one factor, the availability and price of rice, a staple in many cultures. Jump to the next example here, oil. The basic gist here is that we are nearing or at peak production of oil. It's called Hubert's Peak, if you'd like to Google it later. But the type of business solution that you could bring to bear on this would be a restructure type of development project. Again, this is just fodder for our discussion today. When you look at how much of our country's oil gets sucked into our gas tanks, it's an enormous amount. This is because we've bought into the idea of suburbia. This is a multiple decade idea that's been developed. Now, if you restructure suburbia, if you have some of these very, very bright developers restructure suburbia into walkable and bikeable towns, people can become less dependent upon their cars, putting less demand on the oil. Frankly, I would love to see the very, very bright minds over in our architecture school, which gets top ratings year after year after year, join forces with the bright minds in this school to bring solutions in this area to urban and suburban America. Restructuring can also lead to great investments. I think it was one of my finance professors here told me to always follow the money. And that's stuck with me. You can apply that advice to a number of different areas. If you follow the money on investments, particularly if you follow the money of Buffett, Gates, and Soros, you'll follow it to railways. All three of those guys have been buying up railway shares. If you listen to National Public Radio, you'll hear the current sales pitch of one of the main sponsors, the railway CSX. The basic gist is that railways can move more product farther using significantly less oil than the trucking industry. So CSX, with the influx of some of these billionaires' dollars, investment dollars, is positioning themselves to the American public as the sustainable solution for product transportation in North America, for connecting these restructured urban and suburban environments. Next example is an upgrade example. Let's talk about natural gas. We use a lot of natural gas to heat our homes and our buildings, and we use a lot of natural gas to create fertilizer, to grow all that corn. Opportunities abound here to partner with those same architecture folks to build better buildings from scratch and to retrofit and reuse the existing buildings to fix the envelopes that those are within. Next example would be electricity. Particularly on both coasts, rolling brownouts and blackouts are becoming commonplace. Our electric grid is woefully out of date. If you'd like to hear more on that, a deep dive, come back on Monday and listen to T. Boone Pickens and the Pickens Plan. That's a big part of what he addresses. Or if you're not going to be here, just Google Pickens Plan. The inventions that are happening in this space, particularly related to wind and solar, are happening so rapidly, it's very, very exciting. Last example here, an example of shifting to a more positive solution, has to do with soil. With heavy fertilizer use, that corn issue again, and ethanol, and intensive meat grazing, we're losing 10% of our topsoil worldwide year after year after year. And that's the most conservative number I could find. Some numbers were going all the way up to 30%. Now, we can look to some of the ag schools, the agricultural schools, for a source of innovations to invest in and to combine forces with. But there's also an opportunity here to create what you might call an ask more business. That business would be helping U.S. citizens change their lifestyle. Now, you might wonder, can you really create a viable business off of trying to improve lifestyle, trying to create a lifestyle improvement? I have a one-word answer for you. Oprah. That's all she does. Lifestyle improvement. Again, these are just top-of-mind ideas to use as fodder in our discussion today. These are the top-of-mind ideas, though, that I want to discuss using as you apply this Ask More of Business lens to our discussion. You can take this challenge of Ask More of Business and apply it to each and every one of these sectors, as well as each and every sector that you and I work in. Now, this is going to take an enormous amount of work. An enormous amount of work. But it is not the level of work that we have not done before in this country. We've seen this country produce this type of work before when we've been gearing up for a war, when we've been gearing up to put a person on the moon. It is possible. Now, for each of us, as business professionals and just as human beings, it all begins with a single step. A step towards the ultimate goal, which is to take action. Frankly, I need your help. Dean Wu needs our help. The faculty here need our help, and the current students need our help. Now, given all this, am I pessimistic about the future? Well, yes. If you're not reading the reports. But am I optimistic about the future? Yes. Because if you're not, you just need to spend 5 minutes with any of the current students. Their desire for asking more of business is infectious. Tom Tierney, he's the ex-CEO of Bain & Company, the consulting firm. He left to form a new consulting firm focused specifically on helping nonprofits. He recently had 2,500 applications for just 17 open new job slots. 25 well-educated MBAs wanting to use their skill set to apply their skill set to better nonprofits. We are poised to bring hope back to our world. Business can be about bringing positive change to people's lives and positive change to our world. Frankly, there will be naysayers. Ignore them. There will be people that freeze or freak out. Just pass them by. The macro forces crashing down on our society today that we read about must be addressed. And by asking more of business, we can demonstrate a new way of leading. Now, whether you're concerned with peak oil, peak water, or the peak dollar, now is the time to act. Now, that might be asking a lot, but that's what I'm asking of myself. That's what I'm asking of business. And that's what I'm asking of you. Join me as we ask for more of ourselves together. Thank you. We've got microphones here. Let's open the floor up now for questions and discussion.
Dave Olivencia, Director at Oracle. On the B Corp,
yes.
I think you said they measured two things. One was shareholder value, and the other was social impact.
Yeah.
How are they planning to measure social impact?
They have a laundry list. It's not a short list. It's actually a painfully long list of check marks to go through. And they've divided up in, I think it's 6 different areas. When you apply to become a B corporation, you're basically saying the kimono is open and you can do a full audit and we will show you everything. That can be a little bit scary. It can also be quite a bit of work. I know because each year they do a random audit of a startup, small-sized company, random audit of medium-sized, random audit of a large. And Fairtrade Sports was selected as the random audit in year 1 for the startup companies. So I got to know the audit process pretty well because Bart, one of the founders, and 2 MBAs flew out and spent a full day going through everything soup to nuts with Fairtrade Sports. If you go to B Corporation, bcorporation.net is the website. You'll see the big, long master list of all the different things that they look at, but you'll also see it divided out by category. Some of the categories are quite familiar. Some of the categories are quite challenging, as in changing your bylaws so that you are actually building in this secondary social value goal actually into the bylaws of the company. They've got a team of attorneys that are becoming very familiar with each state's incorporation laws, and so they're able to advise on those. Fair Trade Sports, I'm from Seattle. Fair Trade Sports is a Washington state company. And unfortunately, that's a lousy state to be incorporated in. B Corporation can help you make that transition to a different state that is more amenable to adding those types of bylaws in there, so that from the board level down, you're seeing that level of transparency and accountability. Yes?
I don't know if I need a microphone. Scott, I'd like you to talk a little bit about fair trade. In a sense that fair trade is so popular in Europe, for example, but, you know, it's sort of, has a little bit of resonance in the U.S., but not nearly at the level that it should have. Why is that so, and what type of challenges do you face as a fair trade company?
Yeah, Dean Wu's question is about fair trade. She's right. Fair trade in the U.S., I would call it's still at the fringe level. It's definitely a fringe movement. In Europe, it's mainstream. In Europe, at the last winter holiday gift-giving season, the mainline department stores were falling over themselves trying to say, we're more fair trade than the next guy down the block. And you saw it in their print advertisements and on their radio jingles and everywhere. The U.S. is, I tend to think of the U.S. as about 5 to 10 years behind Europe. It was the same thing, if you go and look back at the organic food movement, we saw it's a very nice mirror of that. Now, where we see organic as becoming quite mainstream, 10 years from now, 7 years from now, we'll see the same thing with fair trade. It is a challenge, though. One, it's a challenge because it can become an inherently negative story. When you talk about fair trade, you have to talk about worker rights and how much you pay your workers. And you even have to talk about whether your workers are adults or children. And this is a level of conversation that the organic movement did not have to get into. The organic movement was able to take a step back and say, okay, yes, there's some negative things here, but there are things like pesticides and these bad chemicals that we all want. There was not a human face related to it. The challenge with fair trade is that it's at the very core, it is a human face that's related to it. I built this last week to teach to my MBA candidates, talking about certification programs. Whether you're talking eco-certification programs, fair trade certification programs, whatever it might be. It's a quick, 3-minute step of how you would think about this. You start up here with the end product. And in my case, it's a soccer ball. But it could also be a bag of coffee. It could be a bag of rice. But it's the end product, and at that end product, that's where the consumer sees a little black and white fair trade certified label. Now, again, this is commonplace in Europe. In Europe, you're getting to the point where it's actually, if you don't see the black and white label, that's the outlier. So they're having to find additional sustainability-related marks to outcompete each other. That will be a wonderful day when we get North America at that point. From here, though, there's a huge chain of business decisions that you have to go through before you get to that. If you start back at the very beginning, and this just takes a soccer ball as an example, you could apply the same type of business decision-making chain to any number of products in any number of sectors. With these, you've got some inputs. Building a soccer ball is not rocket science. There's just a handful of components, some of which we have greened. Organic cotton to use for the batting and for some of the thread. FSC, Forest Stewardship Council certified rubber. 70% of any football that you've seen our guys throw, or any soccer ball that you've kicked around, is made of rubber, latex. And that comes from a rubber tree forest which is FSC certified in our case. So you have some decision-making levels here at the input, at the very beginning of the business process. And probably the most important aspect of this is the people. It's the people that are tapping the rubber, and it's the people that are picking the cotton. There's a human face. And what you want to do, what the Fair Trade Marketing Challenge is to take these human faces that are involved in this process all the way from here, all the way back up to that end product, which can be a difficult challenge, which is what I enjoy. You've also got additional certification for fair trade, for quality, for sustainability, like an eco-certification that happens at the production level. A soccer ball, for instance, starts out as a flat design. Then you can follow the bouncing ball. It goes into our warehouse operations. Depending on what country you're in, those kinds of decisions can be difficult and complex, or other areas that can be very straightforward. All of our sports balls right now, 100% of them come from Pakistan. We're about to bring a Thai, a new manufacturer, through the Fair Trade certification in Thailand, which I'm quite excited about because Pakistan, from a U.S. standpoint, can be an Achilles heel when you're thinking about just a typical SWOT analysis for business leaders. If the State Department decides they want to, they could shut down all imports coming from Pakistan over a long weekend. We've got whatever inventory is left, and we're done. So while we have a strong commitment to reinvest in the communities in Pakistan and to fight the child labor issue in that area, and to then reinvest our after-tax profits with the children in that area, primarily through Room to Read, which is one of the nonprofits that we support, and then also Boys and Girls Club of America for North American youth. But that's an issue. It's an Achilles heel. Operations, this is where you come back to how do you communicate the messaging behind fair trade to the end consumer. Or as I've come to think about North American consumers the last 5 years, is I would actually prefer to start calling them citizens again. Because I want their role as they interact with my company to not just be as a consumer. I want them first and foremost to be a U.S. citizen, to be a Canadian citizen, to be a Mexican citizen, a North American citizen before they are a consumer. The product then gets to the end consumer, to the end citizen. And then this differs from other fair trade companies. Most fair trade companies will reinvest back into their countries through the fair trade certification, which you can see here. So as part of the fair trade certified wages that you pay, those get directly invested, one, into the lives of your workers, but then also, for instance, what we do is pay additional monies into a group fund, which the workers then vote on. And they're voting on what you might expect them to vote on: clean water wells, healthcare programs, educational opportunities for their children. In fact, our manufacturer in Pakistan has those workers voted for the very first healthcare program in the sporting goods industry, the first in the world. Now, we're sitting here mired every day reading about healthcare in our country. Imagine that healthcare doesn't even exist as a program in an industry. That blew my mind. But that was neat. One of the very first things that the workers did was to vote for that. What you'll see here on this last box is the charity. This is where it really, Fair Trade Sports differs from other fair trade companies in that we follow a Newman Zone style company, an S corporation. And it's a relatively straightforward system. I was part of some of these hybrid systems back at the turn of the century in 2000, 2001, where people were trying different business models: a for-profit that owns a nonprofit or a nonprofit that owns a for-profit. And frankly, they're all bogus. If you look at the hard facts of what dollars, how many charitable dollars are actually being generated, not a single one of those hybrid models is doing much. But you go back to 1982 to Paul Newman and his buddies, and they stumbled upon a cash-generating engine built off of an S corporation because it passes everything through. They're able to pass it straight through into a foundation, and then from there disperse it. Other questions? Yes. Jim Bolt. Guy I was bragging
Jim
about.
Bolt. What's your feeling on larger corporations and their giving programs? Like Target, right, advocates, was it 5% that they reinvest in the local communities? I mean, are you saying that that's bogus when the dollars...
Oh, no.
Or how, I mean, can you speak a little bit on that? Because there are some companies that seem to have made headway over the past decade or so.
Yeah, significant headway. There's some social entrepreneurs that have a very negative feeling about anybody who is at scale, at size. I'm not one of those. In fact, I'm a fan of the opposite. I'm a fan that we should get more MBAs, more Notre Dame MBAs, and these Harvard MBAs that I told you about into these large international, multinational corporations to change them and better them from within. I believe it's unrealistic to boycott and ask a company to go away. That's not going to happen. In fact, that's part of why I started Fair Trade Sports. There's ample opportunities for boycotts against the other brand names in the sporting goods industry. Tons of nonprofit groups that organize protests and boycotts and call on you not to buy those products. I actually started Fair Trade Sports because I wanted to show those folks. Most of them are out. Two of the big ones are out near me in the Pacific Northwest. I wanted to show them, look, you have scores of bright marketing folks. Look at what this little team of 10 to 12 people up on some island in Seattle can do. Surely you guys can do the same thing. Whether it's them mirroring our eco certification and lessening the environmental impact of the sports balls, or whether it's if we can encourage and model to them to go all the way through to a third-party verified fair trade system. But I'm a big believer in large corporations changing from within. Some of that change will come from outside pressure, boycotts, consumer and citizen action groups. Some of that change will come from outside market pressure, companies like Fair Trade Sports. But then I think there's a third key component to that stool, which is changing from within, getting these business degreed folks, undergrad and graduate level business thinkers, into those companies to give them the impetus internally. Other questions? Yes?
Scott Dagger, I'm a current student at class of 10. So,
Hey.
You mentioned about the fair trade curve is mirroring the organic curves. How many years behind is the fair trade curve?
I think it's probably 5 to 10. But it depends on a lot. One, when you're looking at Europe, you're looking at a really different economy. You know, you've got the UK, which I think is like, the economy is like the size of Southern California or all of California, but it's definitely a subsegment of what you're looking at for all of North America. So some of those hockey stick projections that you see, I always take those with a grain of salt. You know, when you see the person who wants your investment dollars and they say, year 1 looks like this, year 2 looks like this, and then for some inexplicable reason, year 3 goes like that with sales. But I think because you can look at the European economies as a whole, and it's not a direct apples-to-apples comparison to the North American economy, but I think it's a decent apples-to-oranges comparison, that's what we're going to see is somewhere in a 5 to 10 year range. Yes, sir. Yeah, they're doing something else. So the question was, what do you do? How do you respond if you've got an organization set up like this, a for-profit company that's funneling proceeds, profits, after-tax profits into charities? What do you do if those charities fall apart? If you're not seeing this level of transparency in those charities, if you're seeing unethical behavior in those charities, like we've seen with some recent examples. That's probably when I would go crack out my public relations text and all my notes from Professor O'Rourke. And I think what it is you have some level of control because you have a relationship started. So that's why we've started relationships with these organizations by donating ahead of time before we hit profitability, just so we can start that relationship. But a lot of that is based on trust, and a lot of that is based on what you would call third-party verification. So Room to Read is a terrific organization. It's another ex-Microsoft guy. He's a brilliant marketing and operations thinker. And he has struck into a vein with Room to Read that has just exploded, and it's really neat to see. But they're also listed on Charity Navigator, which is a third-party site that takes a look at all the different charities and goes and does due diligence on them. A little bit the way B Corporation is doing due diligence on all of these for-benefit companies. So there's trust in a system, but I would put my trust mostly in that third-party verification system, mostly in the Charity Navigator type organizations that go in and do the full audits on those guys. Yes, exactly. That's a great phrase. Trust but verify. Yeah. Do your due diligence. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Where do you see potential hiccups in scalability as we move more towards the European model? So, for example, it's been suggested that as the U.S. buys more into the organic revolution, that it creates certain types of, not problems, but things we need to overcome in order to achieve that scale. Where do you see that in your own operations, and what do we do to help people address that from a business school perspective?
Yeah. I think it's fair to actually use the word problems. So the question is if you scale, if fair trade scales, if as the organic movement continues to scale, we're going to hit roadblocks. We're going to hit issues, problems to work through. That's very much true. When Walmart went over a long weekend, converted a chunk of their stores to organic produce, a number of folks were very, very excited. A number of folks, particularly the long-term thinker folks, were also petrified because they know the Walmart volumes. They know the North American appetite for bananas. And so you have to look at things. And this, in my hometown, this is a conversation that the Starbucks folks have all the time, is they say, we're at this, here's our purchases of coffee. We're at this level of coffee that is certified fair trade. The remainder of it goes with our cafe standards, which is an internal, not a third-party verification, but an internal verification system. Run by some very, very bright folks at Starbucks. And the problem is that they say, you know what, if we went 100% fair trade, there'd be none left. Literally, you'd put all the other roasters out of business all around the world because they have reached that point of scale where if they bought up all the fair trade certified coffee, you'd have hundreds, maybe thousands of small and medium-sized roasters go out of business. There wouldn't be fair trade certified coffee left to buy. So there is a consumption issue. That's why I think if you take the fair trade issue, I would actually think about that in the same light as some of these other, the peak everything issues, so that we're thinking about these all in together, because I think they're related. How we irrigate our crops and how we fertilize our crops is going to be related to if you convert to all organic. Do you actually have enough all organic tomatoes that you could grow in the world for the U.S. appetite for those tomatoes. There's a fellow named David Corton, and then also the entrepreneur and environmental activist Paul Hawkins, who I quoted. Both those folks have books out, and both of them address this. The basic idea is, can we continue with our current lifestyle, our current rate of consumption, and just convert it to be a fair trade certified lifestyle, an organic certified rate of consumption? And most of those thinkers are saying no. Most of those thinkers are saying there's too many roadblocks to hit. So when I read stuff like that and hear about things like that, that's where I see opportunity, and that's where I see, okay, that's a terrific roadblock. Let's cherry pick the 10 brightest undergrad business students from Notre Dame and the 5 brightest MBAs, and let's put them on a task force, and let's find some money through Irish Angels, through the Jagot Center, and throw it at these 20 and 30-somethings and give them that problem to work through, because I believe it can be solved. Other questions? Yes, sir.
One other question. What are you going to do with people like my mother who are dependent upon investments to pay for her ongoing expenses? She's invested in these companies, and these companies are in turn return dividends, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And you're now telling, what I'm hearing you advocate is, okay, companies don't return a dividend to an investor, they return a dividend to a charity.
A social dividend, yeah. So the question is let's, your mom and my grandmother are, they're living on investment dollars, and those investment dollars are coming from General Electric, and they're coming from IBM, and they're coming from a number of companies that are very stable, but they're stable, and they might just be thinking about the old rule of just maximizing shareholder wealth. If we move to this new rule of maximizing shareholder wealth and social value simultaneously, am I taking money, am I potentially jeopardizing my grandmother's and your mother's livelihood? I think the answer is no. I think what we're talking about is not taking away their dividend, but it's an and, it's a plus, an and plus solution. So it's not taking away their dividend, it's keeping that dividend flowing, but also creating a social dividend. So the argument there would be that company X, which currently returns this dividend to your mom and my grandmother, continues to give that dividend and actually might even be able to increase that dividend because they have added a social value that they're returning. And we as consumers, we as citizens first, reward them for that. You have company X and company Y. Company X does this, does both maximizing shareholder value, maximizing social value simultaneously. Company Y only does the old school maximizing shareholder wealth. The marketplace ends up rewarding company X for doing that. So we actually, through all of this painful work, it's not easy or a lot of fun, we actually help your mom and my grandmother. Yeah. Yes?
I don't want to hog this, but a lot of times, particularly in the U.S., there are people who are vehemently against fair trade, and it's very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
The arguments tend to be very emotional, and it tends to go along the line that fair trade goes against the principle of the free market.
Mm-hmm.
I don't totally agree with that. But I want to ask you, you also said I'm an unabashed capitalist, but of course clearly you're in fair trade. Could you speak a little bit about that, perhaps seeming, not necessarily really actual, tension between fair trade and free market?
Yeah. The tension is there, and it's palpable depending on what trade show or industry meeting you're at. And sometimes you can feel it in the room. When Dave Batstone and Kike and some of the other guys were starting not-for-sale campaign, and they tapped me to help with what we ended up calling the Freedom Store. It's an online store for the not-for-sale campaign, and we find products that are made by folks who have escaped slavery. And from all over the world, we bring them here to the U.S. and create a marketplace for them. Jerry from an agency called The Change, I think, is the one who gave me the nickname when they were handing out job titles of the free marketer. And there's two versions of that. One is the free market, as in I believe the free market is a useful way to fight modern-day slavery. But then he also meant it tongue-in-cheek because I don't get paid for that. So it was the free marketer guy. But I believe that the system that we have built over the past couple hundred years, maybe longer, depending on which economics texts you read, is not perfect. It's very good at doing some things. It's very good at generating cash. It's not very good at allocating that cash. And so I think there is room for improvement. And that's, I think, what you're seeing, all these bright minds coming up in the social enterprise and the social venture capital markets, is how do we take this capitalistic system and tweak it so that we can move away from where we currently are. We can move away from banks melting down and financial houses melting down and consumer trust going out the window. And even using consumer as the way that we describe our target markets. I'd love to start, at some point I'll start another campaign to use the word citizen instead of consumer. Because I think it more accurately reflects what we should be spending our time and our dollars on. That tension, though, is very real, and there's a number of folks in the fair trade movement who, when they watch this video online, I'm going to get flamed on emails because they'll consider me talking to business school folks as heresy, and me answering Jim Bolt's question about I'd actually like to see large companies change from within, not go away. That's heresy to quite a few folks in the fair trade industry. Frankly, I think unless we do move in this direction, fair trade will remain a fringe industry. Unless we move into getting Costco on board and getting Target, as Jim said, on board, or continuing to fill out Whole Foods markets around the country. Unless we begin to get to that level of volume, fair trade will stay on that fringe. And that's a dangerous place to stay because it's very easy to fall off. And then the movement is gone. Yes, sir.
You're up against formidable competition.
Yes.
With fair trade sports. And I don't know your distribution channels. I suspect that there is a lot of sympathy by fair trade man. So in the long run, Scott, would you rather have fair trade sports be big and successful and make a lot of money, or would you rather shame Adidas and Nike and Wilson and Spalding into adopting more fair trade activity? I mean, at the end of the day, what's success?
Yeah. I can define success with fair trade sports in several different ways. One is the first that you mentioned. Fair trade sports grows up, respect becomes a brand, household brand name, and you sell lots and lots of sports balls. That's actually my least exciting way of doing it because that's just the normal path. My more exciting definition of success is that we see some of these other brand names that you mentioned start to convert their own lines because they feel either market pressure or they're feeling from within an internal pressure because they've got business students internally saying, hey, look what this little startup is doing. We need to get on top of this. This is this low-HOS demographic, lifestyles of health and sustainability, this demographic that we want to bring into our stores or that we want to endorse our brand. And if that happens through a partnership, wonderful, as long as it's an authentic partnership. As long as it's not a, hey, let's go buy Fair Trade Sports, and then we'll make the whole thing go away in 18 months. We'll sweep it under the rug. So an acquisition is another way that you can define success for a startup company. You know, I came out of high tech. Lots of companies just do that. They just, let's throw tons of money at this and some really bright marketing folks, and let's hope we get bought. And it's not a really great strategy. It worked for some folks, but not many. But if 2 years from now or 5 years from now we've built this brand, this respect brand, to the point where it becomes an acquisition target, that's fine, and I would call that success if it's an authentic acquisition. If one of the top 5 brands brings it in and then spreads it throughout the entire product line. The ideal there is that you change one of the top 5 brands, and you change them, say, just for this little microcosm of their business, sports balls. But then it starts a domino effect. It starts to affect their apparel lines. It starts to affect their shoe lines. It starts to affect the ethos of the entire company. And you can do that from within. You can also define success, though, with that if you have one of the top 5 players that acquires you or that mimics you. Some people would look at that and they would go, oh, we're done. You know, our marketing budget of $100,000 just met up with a marketing budget of $100 million. We're done. You know, they're bringing out an eco-certified soccer ball. We're done. I don't think that way. We might be done. And 6 months later, after one of the major top 5 brands introduces a third-party certified eco line of soccer balls or a fair trade certified line of footballs, we very well might be done. And I will happily shut the doors, declare victory, and then figure out what industry I want to change next. Because if you get one of the top 5, the other 4 have to follow. Because I think what we'll see is that if you get one of those top 5, they see the market share that they're going to be gaining because you're gaining a competitive advantage there, albeit temporarily. That way, you've now spurred on the rest of that industry. And then you can walk away from that saying, hey, that's wonderful. We changed an industry for a relatively small dollar amount. And a few years' time, we changed an industry. Other questions? One more. Last one. Or we can wrap it up right there. Yes?
Just have one question, Scott, on educating the citizen, your consumer-turned citizen. How are you doing that? I know that you have taken some steps with your website in particular. You don't necessarily go to a retail outlet right away. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. The question is this pet peeve of calling North Americans consumers rather than citizens when we refer to them, and we being business people and marketing people in particular are very guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. How are we encouraging that change? We do it through a variety of ways, primarily positive word of mouth. It's an experiment to see how few marketing dollars can you take to affect how massive of a messaging change out there. So some are little things, like we have little ambassador of respect business cards. So somebody who purchases, you had referred to it earlier as a sympathy buy. We haven't actually had too many of those sympathy buys. We more have these people who are on the fringe who then become our evangelists. They buy this soccer ball for their child, and then every Saturday morning, they are constantly talking to the other parents. Hey, did you know I've got an eco-certified soccer ball here? Or, hey, isn't that little colorful soccer ball my son's playing with neat? Let me tell you about it. And you have effectively turned them into an evangelist. Or as I like to think of it, you have then changed them from being just a consumer to being a citizen, to being a world citizen. So there's little tricks of the trade that you could use like that. if that citizen on Saturday morning has a business pocket or a pocket full of business cards that say Ambassador of Respect on it, and they're able to hand it to the people, you've now turned that person into a professional spokesperson for your company. Other ways, though, that we do is, like if you go to fairtradesports.com, most of the time when you go to a product goods company that has online operations, you go right into the store. Ours, you don't. You go to our blog, where we're using the blog as an effective communication means. You can click through. You have to click through one level down to get to the store, and a level down to get to the wholesale store. But primarily what we want to use our website about is for educational purposes, getting this information out there and equipping others. Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
Scott, thank you so much. And I want to say, on behalf of Dean Wu of Mendoza College of Business and the John Cardinal O'Hare Society, we are honored to make a donation in your name to Room to Read, one of your charities that we work with.
Great.
So thank you so much.
Wonderful. That's great.
And we're going to actually move on. Scott, I know, is going to be hanging around for a little bit, so if you have other questions, he'll be here. But we do want to let you know, in 15 minutes, we will be starting our Dean's Welcome Reception, which is right out in the atrium. So we look to see you there. Thank you so much.
Yeah.